So there's been a lot of talk about Nintendo and the patent that it basically managed to get in the US about summoning sub characters and having them fight for you in some gameplay mechanics that are obviously going to be visible in other games. Like people look at stuff like the Persona series of just summoning personas, though you don't really control those as sub characters, but something closer to like the Digimon story games, for example, I think are a very good example of this. Whether it be Cyber Sleuth, there was another one that came out after that, and then of course the more recent Time Stranger that's going to be coming out later on. It's unfortunate to see that this is kind of what's happening with the whole patent situation, because the point of a patent is basically to keep your ideas to yourself, so that should anyone try and like make something similar enough or make a market replacement that's close enough, that you can just sue them basically into oblivion, and they'll never be able to make or do anything similar like that ever again, which is pretty insane to think about. And now I think that this IGN article, I think, does a pretty good job of actually going into the details of the patent and listing out 9 very unique things that a couple of things have all been reported on by other people, but there are some things that I didn't see other people talk about, so I thought that was actually quite interesting. But I do actually also agree with the title of this article as well, that Nintendo should never have received the summon characters and let it fight Pokemon patents that, I just 100% agree with that statement, even if it came out of a patent lawyer rather than, anyone who works at IGN. That being said, so the patent that was filed in 2023 ostensibly covers a technique that Pocket Pair tried to work around, the idea of PAL spheres for Pokeballs and stuff like that, but poses a fundamental threat to creativity in the industry. That much is obvious, because when you patent a gameplay mechanic, yes, people are going to be significantly less likely to actually make use of that mechanic very much, and will always look back at what happened with the Nemesis system, with the Shadow of games that came out, so Shadow of War, Shadow of Mordor, with the whole Nemesis system, and the fact that there was going to be a game that was going to have it as well, but ultimately ended up cancelled and never ended up coming to light, which was the Wonder Woman game, basically. And also, I think, if I remember correctly, the studio was also shut down. But enough of kind of that story. Let's talk about what's happening here. So, here are the list of mechanics that we're kind of talking about. Okay, they go into significant detail. So the first one is that there must be a PC, console, or other computing device, and the game is stored on a drive or similar storage medium. I'm sure discs, cartridges, digital downloads, anything that requires a storage medium, that's pretty bloody obvious. That you can move characters in a virtual space, that much is also obvious. I feel like all games are basically virtual spaces by all accounts. Number 3, you must be able to summon a character, they call it a sub-character, by which they mean it's not the player character, but for example, a little monster such as a Pokemon that the player character has at their disposal. Now, we could break this down and say, for example, Digimon as well, in the case of Time Stranger. I'll just use that because that's kind of like the closest equivalent in terms of release date of examples I can think of at the top of my head. Then the logic, so number 4, then the logic branches out, with items 4 and 5 being mutually exclusive scenarios before reuniting again at item 6. So that's number 4. Number 5, this is about summoning the sub-character in a place where there is already another character that it will then, when instructed to do so, fight. So now this is looking at turn-based mechanics, because Pokemon don't usually fight by themselves. They usually, Pokemon games are turn-based RPGs. So you have to select a move that you want to use, an item that's in your bag, switching out with another Pokemon, or just straight up running from a fight if you really wanted to. So giving you those options, for example. This alternative scenario is about summoning the sub-character at a position where there is no other character to fight immediately. Wait, hold on. Alternative scenario is about summoning the sub-character at a position where there's no other character to fight immediately. So they really just want to cover their bases on whether or not there's an enemy to fight or not to fight, but the fact that a sub-character is being summoned in any way, shape, or form, basically immediately. That is very, very dodgy. in terms of how they're really going about this. That's actually pretty crazy. This final step is about sending the sub-character in a direction and then letting an automatic battle ensue with another character. It is not clear whether this is even needed if one previously executed step 4, where the sub-character is basically thrown at another character. And that sub-character being thrown, I think, is supposed to be a metaphor or some sub-equivalency of using potentially a ball-like substance. Because, say for example, if you were to actually throw an actual like creature at another creature, like say for example we have dogs as an example, if someone picked up a dog and threw a dog at someone else, like, it doesn't really work that way, because there are Pokemon that are large, there are Pokemon that are small. Some are more throwable than others, but ideally you wouldn't want to be doing that. So I think the idea is that that's supposed to refer to a Pokeball or a Palsphere or something along those lines. Basically a carrying vehicular mechanism for the actual creature to be housed within. So maybe I'm like thinking about that a little bit too deeply at the moment, but it makes sense that, like, hey, everyone is bloody worried as hell that, like, you know, all of this feels too much like they're just not just trying to go after Pal World, but potentially any other games that want to muscle in on Pokemon's territory. And the problem is that, remember, there are games like Nexamon, there is stuff like, you know, there are other types of like Pokemon clones, ROM hacks and stuff like that all over the place. So I feel like we shouldn't be too surprised by that, but the fact, keeping in mind, this is a US based patent, specifically patent number 12403-397. Actually, do we have any diagrams? Since we have a link to it, I'm sure it'll actually take us to the actual patent in question. So, United States patent, so we've got the number, and the patent has been dated the 2nd of September 2025. The inventor, so Shigeru Omori, and the applicants are Nintendo and the Pokemon Company, so they're both equally culpable in this sense, and it was originally filed on the 1st of March 2023. Oh, and they do have a little diagram, so you've got 201 being the character, the player character, 202 being the sub creature, wait, sub what? Hold on, it was sub character, I think. Yeah, that's the sub character. And then you've got 203 being like the vehicular item by which they'll be held, so a Pokeball or a Palsphere, and 204 being the actual sort of play area, I'd imagine. Interesting. How deep does this rabbit hole go? And of course, they're showing off a Nintendo Switch here, so of course, they're really just wanting to make sure they... Okay. Now they're just kind of showing off the Switch outside of, like, the outside shell of the Switch, it seems like. I could be wrong about that, but I'm just going into way too much of the deets that are pretty much unnecessary, including the internal schematics of it. God dang. And then, of course, the visualization. What other diagrams do we have here? Oh, okay, here's the case where we have a opposing character or an enemy, so to speak. And this very much is supposed to resemble Pokemon. So, automatically move, so you can't control the sub-character, I assume, since that was targeted at 205, and then, of course, signifying an opponent of sorts. And then, like, sub-characters fighting here, being won or lost, whatever the heck the ultimate circumstance is. And of course, using terms like captured, for example, it really does make it feel like it's just meant to be the general idea of capturing a sub-creature. And of course, here we have the actual logic that the program is supposed to go through, and flowcharts and diagrams to signify starting point and end point of everything as a whole. So that's crazy that they've gone into like so much significant detail to talk about one very simplistic mechanic that I feel like way too many games are making use of currently, and that this does feel incredibly unfair to completely patent in every way, shape, or form. So I do agree that this is absolutely egregious what they're doing, and I hate that it is what they're doing, but thank goodness I don't give Nintendo any money for like Pokemon games, since I just download them and play them on emulation. So hey, for what it's worth, at least I'm not giving them any smackaroons for that. But yeah, no, let me know what you guys think about this whole situation in the comments below. I'm sure there's a lot of thoughts and a lot of things going around that people want to share about, like how just absolutely insane and bonkers this is, that it's absolutely not worth, like Nintendo should just never have been gotten, should never have been given this patent to begin with. I don't know why I said gotten first, but yeah, it's just, Pokemon is like one of the biggest things in the world. You're going to be making tons of money regardless of you making these patents. So why are Pokemon Company and Nintendo even going down this path? That really is the question at the end of the day. Because money can't possibly be the only reason, since it's clear that they're making tons of money regardless, with or without this patent. But mostly it feels like it's to stifle creativity and, unique titles within a similar branching area. But with all that being said though, let me know what you guys think about all this in the comments below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel. I'm aiming for 500 subs by the end of the year. With all that being said, I do upload every day, so I'll see you guys tomorrow.